How's everybody doing? Good afternoon. Who got wet? I jumped my cue. It's my fault this time. I can't wait to get started. You know, we were having the food trucks outside. Who got to go eat before the storm came? And who was out there waiting on their food when the storm came? I was out there for a little bit, and then I saw the rain start coming down, and I thought, I hope it didn't surprise as many people as I think it did, because I have a feeling that it got a little hairy out there really fast. Am I right? Yeah, all right. I'm getting all my station made here because I've been preparing for hours and days and months for this. I'm so excited about this interview. I've been looking forward to it. And we've talked a couple of times in the past, but never with this kind of time. Usually, if you go to Elvis Week, I do so many interviews during Elvis Week, but I only get about 20 minutes with somebody. You know, maybe 25 if I'm lucky. But today, to be able to have 6 hours to sit here and talk about this, it's just, I'm just so excited about it. And even as you came in, you were experiencing a conversation with Linda because the music you were listening to, the lyrics were all written by Linda Thompson. That's right. She thought she recognized it, and she made 37 cents since she got here today, already on the music that we played. So the music business is really something else. We want to thank our presenting sponsor of the Tupelo Elvis Festival, the Tupelo Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we also want to thank you for being here for this very special event. There's a lot of things I could say to introduce her, but I just want to get her out here so we can start hearing about her incredible life, a little thing called life. From Memphis, Tennessee, Miss Linda Thompson. I haven't seen you since over there. Yeah, I'm glad. I was so worried she would hear that I played T-R-O-U-B-L-E when she walked out, so I'm glad she didn't notice that.
Well, you wouldn't have been wrong.
Oh, okay. I read your book. I kind of know. One of the things I find so interesting about your book, and when I first bought it, I bought it for my wife Lisa, because I said, I want you to read, because I thought I knew your story. And I said, I got this for you, right when it came out. And about 2 days into it, because that's about all it took to read, she was staying up, and she said, do you know all this stuff? And I said, well, I think I do. And one of the first things you say in your book is, I had to wait a little bit because a lot of it wasn't just my story.
Absolutely, and I had to have enough respect, for the people in my life to reveal their truth before I could expound upon it and tell them what it was like from my point of view, from my perspective, to have lived through some of the things that I did.
Yeah, and we see so many autobiographies and biographies of people, and we know that there are things held back. And I know there were so many things in your life that are so personal, but to open up the way you did and to share the things that you did share is just amazing. And it feels like I'm sitting in the room listening to you talk to me when I read your book.
That's so nice to hear, and that's the way, I tried to write it. I really felt like it was such a huge responsibility. I waited I think 40 years until after Elvis had passed away, and everything that could have possibly been written about Elvis had been written, and then some, were made up stories. So I really thought it was a huge responsibility, and to this day, I've always attempted to represent him in the light that he deserves. He was such a remarkable human being, and again, I tried to write the book with kindness and tolerance and understanding, and also just a bit of knowledge that you can only garner through life experience. I had to live my life and carve out my own career. I didn't want to be one of those people that just jumped on the bandwagon and wrote a book and made a profit at his expense, and to capitalize on that relationship. I was very guarded about that, and I wanted to carve out my own position in life, write my own songs, and carve out my own career, and have my kids and my family, and then write about my life and where he fit into it, which was, of course, the greatest love imaginable, and he's influenced my songwriting, he's influenced every aspect of my life.
And your story, not only for all of us, for your family, for Brandon and Brody to read about you and to find, did they find out things they didn't know?
I'm not sure they finished reading the book. They got to the part in the Elvis section where it got a little romantic, and Brody was going, "Mom, I don't know if I want to read about, you kissing Elvis and his lips were like marshmallows, and I don't know, that's just kind of weird." So I just finished reading the book.
Yeah. Well, it's, like I said, I think it's an amazing story, and it's just, you get into the rhythm of listening to you in the book, and such a story. And it all began because your family, you were from Memphis, and your family were there, and at a very young age, you won a beauty queen title. I mean, we're talking to Miss Mid-South right here. I mean, this...
That was Miss Mid-South. That was the Mid-South
yeah.
Fair. That was awesome. I love that title. I got to go to the fair every day, the Mid-South Fair.
But that was something that was... your first, look at this photo.
18.
18 years old, and that's Mid-South Fair? That's Miss...
Of course, I like to say I was 5 years old, but I was mature for my age.
What did doing this, competing, and the several titles that you won, what did that teach you about what it takes to be in front of an audience?
Well, interestingly enough, I never thought I was the cutest thing. But somebody saw my photo in a yearbook. I was the homecoming queen at Kingsbury High School, and apparently they recruited girls to enter the pageants. And so I got recruited to enter the Miss Mid-South pageant, and they kind of lured me by saying, "Oh, you'll win scholarships, you win luggage, you win cars, you win clothes, wardrobes." And my parents, we were very modest. We didn't have any money at all. So, and I couldn't afford to put myself through school without working. And it afforded me the opportunity to finish 4 years of university because I won scholarships, and I did win a couple of cars. In fact, I won a Chevrolet Vega that didn't have any air conditioning. And you know how it is in the South here. It gets swelteringly hot in the summer. And it's the little Chevrolet Vega that I drove to Graceland when I first went to meet Mr. Presley, Vernon Presley, and Elvis had invited me the night after we met. And he made fun of my car. He said, "Is this your car, honey?" I said, "Uh-huh. I won it as Miss Liberty Bowl." And he said, "Okay, yeah, that's really nice." Congratulations on Miss Liberty Bowl, anyway. And of course, shortly thereafter, he bought me a Lincoln Mark IV.
Yeah, I was going to say that was first of several cars. Take us back. You talk about a meet cute, as they say in Hollywood. The night how did you meet Elvis for the very first time?
Well, I was Miss Tennessee Universe. In fact, my chaperone, with a big quote, Pat Kerr, Tigrid is here today. She's a darling woman. So Pat was the director of the Miss Tennessee Universe pageant, and I won that year and went down to San Juan, Puerto Rico, and my roommate was Miss Rhode Island, Jeannie LeMay, and we became best friends. And when we came back to Memphis, she decided she wanted to come to Memphis and meet my family and maybe think about moving there. And we were walking down the street one day, and Bill Browder, who is T.G. Shepherd, he changed his name to T.G. Shepherd and had a lot of #1 hits. So T.G. says, "Hey girls, come on and have lunch with us at Fridays." And then he said, "Do you want to meet Elvis?" And Jeannie immediately said, "Yes." And I said, "Jeannie, we have to work. We had a gig. I'm sure, Pat, you remember this. We had a gig modeling as Miss Tennessee Universe and Miss Rhode Island Universe." And I said, "Jeannie, we have to work." And she says, "I'm not missing an opportunity to meet Elvis. We'll do it. We'll get substitutes." So we got my cousin Shelley and one of her friends to go and do the modeling gig for us, which was highly irresponsible. They were expecting Miss Tennessee and Miss Rhode Island, not cousin Shelley. So we got in a little bit of trouble. Pat, you've forgiven me by now, right? So we met Elvis, and I was standing in the lobby of the Memphian Theater. That he rented out the Memphian Theater at midnight, and I'm standing there talking to David Stanley, his stepbrother, and he bangs on the door, and everybody scurried, and they went to open the door, and he had this long flashlight. He was flashing it around, saying, "Hey, who locked that door? This is the door I wanted to come in." "Sorry, boss." Everybody was going, "Sorry, boss, we thought you were going to come in the front door." And he said, "No, you got to anticipate better than that." And he was yelling at them and stuff. and the light shone on my face, and he goes, "Oh, hello there." His whole demeanor changed, and he became that charming Southern gentleman. He walked over to me, and he said, "And who are you, honey?" And David Stanley said, "This is Miss Tennessee Universe, Linda Thompson, and this is her friend Jeannie LeMay, Miss Rhode Island." And we just made a little small talk in the lobby, and he was very gentlemanly, very attentive. Then we went inside and sat down, and he sat in the middle row of the theater always, and they had a little TV tray always set up for him in the middle row, and they would have his Tipperillos and a Coca-Cola set up, and nobody dared to sit in that row or anywhere in front of him. I didn't know that at the time, but I sat, several rows behind him with Jeannie, and he kept turning around to talk to me, and he was showing me some beautiful watch that he had, and just, making small talk. And then we would always go like this to roll the movie. The movie started, and he got up and tapped, George Klein had sat down next to me, and he tapped George on the shoulder, and went like that, so George went back to the lobby, and Elvis apparently said, "Who is that?" And George said who I was, and gave me a good word, I guess. So I felt someone plop down next to me, and I thought it was George. Oh, it's Elvis. And I said, "Oh, to what do we owe this honor?" And I was kind of, I was not intimidated. I thought he was married. I thought he was just being gracious. I wasn't flirting. I didn't think he would be flirty. And then he got very flirty, and I was very standoffish. And I said to Jeannie, "We have to leave. I'm not going to be a part of this." And he said, "Honey, I'm not married anymore, don't you?" And I said, "Well, no, I didn't know that." How close can I get? No, he said, I'm not married anymore. Unfortunately, we split up around Christmas time, and I've been fully separated since January, and this was July 6th. And I said, "Well, I'm really sorry to hear that, but you should have married a Southern girl." And I know you all understand that, because we who come from the South, it's a whole different culture. I was just saying, in fact, everyone here is so friendly, and I've lived in California for a very long time, and I love it out there. But it's so nice to be around Southern, genteel, wonderful, warm, hospitable people. Tupelo is just magnificent and just filled with wonderful people. So my girlfriend wants to move here, my friend who's with me.
Well, I know some people that sell real estate.
Okay.
You'd never, in all those years, you'd never been to Tupelo. You'd heard about it, but...
Oh, yes.
And you'd been as a child.
As a child, because, I grew up in Memphis, and I had an uncle who lived here. He was a pharmacist, uncle and cousins who lived here. And I came down as a little kid, I think, but in the years that I lived with Elvis, we talked about Tupelo, and he would tell me about his little shotgun house where he was born, and he told me about the church. I can't wait to see both, but I have to tell you a funny story about the little church, because he said, there was a little church that my family went to, a Pentecostal church, I believe, and he said, I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I couldn't say hallelujah very plainly. He said, but I would just get filled with the Holy Spirit, and I'd run down the aisle singing, "Adewuchi, Adewuchi," singing "Addy, Adewuchi" all the way. So I called him Adewuchi half the time, but he was such a lovely, human person like that. Like, he really felt everything very deeply. He remembered wonderful remembrances of his childhood like that, and the church and the house. And so I'm so excited to see the house, and thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you being here, and the thing that I love about it is you really do see the roots. You understand where he came from. It's hard sometimes when you look at the cars and the jewelry and the mansion to remember the overall wearing little boy who lived in this town and was in no way on the right side of the tracks and what he was able to accomplish.
Absolutely.
And you talk in your book about those first few days that you guys did almost the equivalent of a year of courting. In about 2 or 3 days, you just became part of that world pretty quickly. And at this point, you're how old?
5.
Yeah, 5, right?
Okay, 6.
You had to grow up so
was
quickly
22.
and understand kind of the operation of his world, and everything kind of revolved around what he wanted to do.
Oh, absolutely. And even though I was 22 and had gone through 4 years of university, but experientially I was probably about 15, because I had never gotten out of Memphis except one time to go to Houston. I was the golf queen at Memphis State, and never played golf in my life, by the way. But I was the golf queen and flew to Houston. That was my first time on an airplane. So experientially, I was very naive and kind of green. So, and I think he loved that. I mean, he absolutely loved that about me. But you're right, in the 4.5 years that I lived with him would equate, honestly, to about a 20-year marriage if you thought about people like going to work, coming home, and, you know, taking separate activities together and that kind of thing. We were together 24/7, and he was quite needy as an individual, and he wanted me with him. Like when I first met him, and I left town for 2 weeks, and when I came back into town, he said, "Where have you been?" He had Joe Esposito calling me every day. We were down in Gulf Shores, Alabama, if any of you have been there. It's so pretty. So I went with my Aunt Betty down to Gulf Shores and was off the grid. You know, he couldn't reach me for 2 weeks, and it made him crazy. So when I came back, we got home at like 10 o'clock at night, and the phone was ringing, and Joe Esposito said, "Oh my God, I've got this number memorized. I've dialed it 10 times a day. Elvis has been driving me crazy. Where have you been?" And then Elvis took the phone and said, "Get on a plane. I want you with me. When I told you I wanted you with me, that's what I meant. I want you with me. Who the hell do you think I am?" Guess you're Elvis.
So you were playing hard to get without even knowing that's what you were doing.
Yeah, because I had a plan to go with my Aunt Betty Sue to Gulf Shores, Alabama, so I stayed with that commitment. And but I swooned over him. We played his music the whole time we were down in Gulf Shores, and I guess I was being a little coy, you know, but I was not used to being the one that would pursue, so I let him do the pursuing.
Because you didn't get his number. He got you.
No, and I made him work for it, because he said, "Can I get your phone number?" And I said, "Well, I don't have a pen or a piece of paper." So he said, "Joe," and he actually, it's such a cliche, but he actually wrote my phone number on a matchbook. And then all the way home to Aunt Betty's house, we were going there that night, I was kicking myself saying, "Linda, he probably didn't write the number down right, and maybe he threw the matchbook away. Why were you being so coy?" You know, I didn't think I would hear from him, but as soon as I got to Aunt Betty's house, he was on the phone.
Yeah. We've got some photos I wanted to show, and you can start on 7. The two of you together, and I look and I see these, and I see what was the equivalent at the time of probably Instamatic photos in a lot of cases, personal photos, and then a lot of what we call now paparazzi photos of going into places and coming out of places, and a lot of things in
A lot of fan photos.
A lot of fan
Thank
photos.
God for the fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause-
But when you look and see that girl in that photo, what do you wish you could tell her now?
Wear sunscreen. No, I wish that we had been together, and I wish he had been in this lifetime in a time where there was the Betty Ford Center, where there were facilities that could help people who have issues with drug addiction. Even though Elvis was apple pie, mama, apple pie, all-American, paid his taxes across the board, never a deduction. He was such a pristine and amazing man of character and nobility. But, you know, he got caught up with uppers and downers, and then he was on stage. It was the same Judy Garland thing, you know, same syndrome that happened with her, and it happens to a lot of performers, and he was kind of a victim of that. If they had just had facilities like they do now, there's a plethora of them everywhere around the country. If we had had that, maybe we could have gotten him the help that he needed. I went to the hospital one time, at Baptist Hospital, after we had come back from Vegas, and he had pneumonia. And we came back on a medical evacuation airplane. He was on oxygen. And there was a Dr. Knott and a Dr. Fink, and they helped him, but to the best of their ability. But at the time, there just weren't, there wasn't the knowledge, and there weren't the
Well, all
places.
addiction was one category. It was
Yeah.
just the worst of the worst, and that was it.
Exactly,
It
and
wasn't
he was
tough.
embarrassed. He was embarrassed by it and ashamed of it. And the times that he would, you know, reckon with himself and realize that he had a problem, but there was really not any help. So what I would tell myself would be, you know, I don't think I could have done anything more than I did to try to take care of him and to love him and let him know that he was loved and cared for, and to attend to his needs. There's nothing I could give myself in that regard as far as advice, but I, you know, wish I had known more about prescription medication, and my family didn't even drink, you know, so I didn't know anything about drugs or even alcohol.
Yeah.
So
let's go to photo 17. I see this picture and I think about your life and the thing that's fascinating about your book is when Elvis traveled, you or I would leave in the morning to go somewhere. But so many times they're talking about, we're leaving tonight for Las Vegas.
we lived our lives at night.
It was flipped around, but your life was a constant traveling from here to there. Sometimes after he got the Lisa Marie, anytime he wanted, he had that.
When I look at that photo, all I can see is that little blue bow in the hair. What was I thinking? That's how innocent I was. Yeah, we did live life in reverse. Like, we would wake up. I got to tour Graceland yesterday, did a little VIP tour and revisited where I lived. And in the kitchen, I was telling my friend Dorothy, who's with me, this is where Dodger, Elvis's grandmother, would come in and have her breakfast every morning at 8 a.m. She would come and sit at the counter, and Elvis and I would very likely be just coming in and going to bed. And we'd say, night, Dodger, good morning, good night.
Yeah.
So our hours were totally reversed. We lived like vampires. We were up all night and asleep all day.
Yeah, and photo 15, this is, again, kind of one of those things where you're just on the way somewhere.
Yeah, that's before he got his plane.
Yeah.
So we would charter. Sometimes he would buy out the whole first class section for the guys and me, and then the ones that didn't fit into the first class section he would put in the back. But this was a charter plane, and I think I have a go-go dress and go-go boots on, much to his liking.
Seeing the photos, I mean, Elvis is in a huge Superfly phase at this point. Which is my favorite. I always say that's my favorite Elvis because that's when...
That's a perfect description.
Yeah, it was hats and canes and fur and capes and, like you said, that big flashlight. I mean, that was... And the purple glasses. I mean, those were the Superfly years, and he wore it better than anybody. And it is kind of timeless in a way when he wears it. And looking at... You're a fashion show of 70s...
I kind of was.
Couture, yeah.
I know. It's so funny because my son Brody Jenners always looks at Elvis's photos and he sees the glasses and the hats and the coat with the little cape and the Superfly, all the jewelry. He says, Mom, Elvis was the original pimp daddy. Yeah, he was. He's such an admirer. Brody got a TCB tattoo on his wrist. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's the thing. Elvis was the original.